All right, welcome everyone to episode 53 of APS Radio. My name is Jim Bernick, and today I'm joined by Wendy Norris. Good afternoon to you, Wendy.
Good afternoon. How are you doing? Thanks for having me
I
on.
am I am good. How are you doing?
I'm great. It's just, as we were kind of talking pre-show, it's hard to believe that we're nearing the end of summer and that we're kind of dive balling into the last part of the year.
That's right. I was thanking you because you got me out of yard work for at least a little bit.
I'm glad
But
to be a good excuse.
yeah, so I first met you, and I can't even remember who actually introduced us, but it was at the Country Music Hall of Fame at the FRCE Suicide and Mental Health Conference in Nashville.
Yes.
What, back in March?
Yes. Again, yes. Seems like a lifetime ago, right?
Yeah, wasn't that long ago. And so
Oh,
very cool, like reception at Country Music Hall of Fame. I mean, it was really neat actually being able to
yeah,
tour that. But that's where I first met you and just learned a little bit about you. And I mean, it's some pretty crazy stuff that's gone on throughout your life. My gosh.
for sure. I could write a
Yes.
book.
Yes, you could, and you probably should. Take it from a guy who's actually kind of written one. So
Oh, good. Okay, good. You
I
may have
could we
some
could talk
advice
about that later on, but
for sure.
um, let's there's a point to this, and it's really going to be centered around the upcoming symposium. But I think in order to talk about that, we need to kind of take some steps back and how do we end up there to begin with, right? So years ago, let's go back years ago, decades ago, you were a firefighter and
Yes.
you got injured pretty bad at a fire, right?
Correct. Yes. So I had always wanted to be a firefighter since I was 5. I don't know where it came from. It's not in my family history. Most of my family were in the military, so I'm a military brat. So I don't know where it came from, other than I like to just say I was nosy and I always want to find out what's going on. So luckily, and I was very blessed to later on as a high schooler have that dream of becoming a firefighter a reality when I was brought in as an explorer for a small town north of the San Francisco Bay Area. And so they allowed high schoolers to take positions within the city government to be able to kind of give them internships, job training, things like that, in case they were ever interested in working in city government. And so when I was a sophomore in high school, a position opened up with the fire department there, and I was brought in as the administrative assistant to the administrative assistant to the fire chief. So, probably what all of that entails. Filing paperwork, doing all the little things, as the gopher and whatnot. But then I was part of their Explorer program as well, which opened the door to being able to see things on the street as they happen, go to the fires, go on calls, things like that. And that just really sealed my love and passion for the fire service. And so I got my start out in California. I did a little bit of time in the wildland community. I think that's where everybody probably starts at when they live in California in such a heavily forested area. But I really developed a passion for industrial firefighting and was able to pursue that for a couple of years. Now, mind you, I know nowadays is very different, especially for some of these career departments and agencies where many of them require a college education or so many college credits. Well, for me in that time frame in the 90s, I went directly into the fire academy and paramedic school as an 18-year-old. And so if I count my career even going back to being 16, I was a very young firefighter, but had some experience behind me. And so going into the industrial field was pretty much an anomaly. As a female firefighter, it was kind of rare for us to be in that position in the early 90s, much less industrial. And so I kind of jumped headfirst into that. But I also wanted to keep my training and my experience up with municipal firefighting as well. And so when I was old enough, I joined that same department's volunteer. So that department that I grew up in, so to speak, had a career side and a volunteer side. So I had my hands in many different things. But then I met my husband, who was a Houston firefighter. He had the bigger pension. He was a few years older than I was. And so, since he had the bigger pension, I moved to Texas, and started trying to find a career down here. And in the Houston area, there's lots of industry. And so I was able to kind of figure out that pathway. But again, just because of my love for the municipal side of things, we both joined a volunteer fire department in the area. And so, not even a couple of years since I had moved to Texas is when I had my accident. So we were on a very large structure fire with quite a few mutual aid agencies, including the Houston Fire Department that was there as well. But it was very unorganized, a lot of different command areas with a lot of different information that was being given and not shared amongst the others. And so I was sent into an area that one command group had stated was unsafe for firefighters to be in. But when I was sent up with my partner to go and fight this fire from another angle, we were put back into that area where they had already deemed unsafe for firefighters to be in. It just didn't get communicated over. And so what ended up happening was I had a part of the ceiling collapse on top of me, and it knocked my face mask off just enough to the side where when my partner, so what happened was, as I was coming in, advancing the hose line into this apartment, we had to kind of curve around some different walls to get into the space that we needed to. And so we didn't have enough slack on that fire hose. And so when I went back outside to pull some more in, my partner, who was on the nozzle, felt that tension release. And so he opened up the nozzle, and there was just enough pressure on that water stream to bring down the part of the ceiling that collapsed on top of me. And so it was very fragile to begin with because it had been burning for a while. And all I remember when I went into there, as I was bringing the slack of that hose into that hallway from the door entrance, I could see the sky because it had already burned through the roof of the living room overseeing that apartment. And so all that was really left was part of the kitchen, as far as like structure, the roof structure and ceiling structure, and then over that entry, hallway entry, from what I remember. And so that is what ended up collapsing on top of me. And as that stream was going into that kitchen area, there was a part of the wall that was open. And so there was superheated gases and steam that was coming out that I ended up inhaling. And I wasn't necessarily trapped. It was just a matter of pieces fell on me and then I had to get out from under it. So I really wasn't exposed for very long at all to that, but it was enough to do damage where I have burns within the respiratory tract, and just a few little minor on the side where the buckle from the helmet had kind of burned through the hood. So I was very blessed in that aspect because most of my face was covered, but it was enough because of the mucous membranes and things like that in the respiratory tract that it was greatly affected. And then I also had a brain injury too, where I actually had to learn how to read and write and kind of do math again. So I like to use that as an excuse if I can't remember somebody's name or can't figure out a math problem. I say I have a brain injury, but most of my friends are like, "Okay, we're tired of that, so you got to stop using that as an excuse." So yeah, that's the front end of my story. I like to say that I was a baby firefighter. I was about 22 when all of that happened.
So you have this near miss,
Yes.
you have these injuries, you have to, relearn a lot of different things. And
Yes.
then at some point it strikes you that you want to do something about this. And
Right.
you create the uh, firefighters ministry. Is that correct? What it's called?
Yes.
Why
Correct.
don't you kind of discuss like what exactly that is and how that kind of even came to light for you?
So I would have to say that it was devastation that brought that to me because I will never forget when that doctor walked in and he said, "You're never going to be able to be a firefighter again." And being that I wanted to do that since I was 5 and being so young when that injury happened, and really anytime an injury takes place at whatever age or career stage somebody is in, it can be very devastating for that person. But I felt like I had my whole life ahead of me. And so to be told that was terrible. And then of course, on top of recovering from injuries, it was terrible. And again, kind of piling onto that, seeing my husband go out every shift to a fire department and continue on his work was very hard. And so I would not say that I was suicidal per se, but what I would say is I would look at obituaries and try to find young 20-something-year-olds that had died. And I would think, why didn't that happen to me? It should have happened to me. And things would have been much easier for my husband if I had died, because of those injuries and because of the circumstances that were behind that, we lost a lot of friends. There was a lot of guilt and shame that was piled on surrounding this particular incident. So not only am I dealing with these physical injuries and also the mental strain of not being able to have that career, but just a lot of social issues that were going on around that. And so, in my mind, if I had died, it would have just been easier. I would have gotten a hero's funeral. My husband maybe would have gotten benefits at the time. And so, I had to figure out how to keep my foot in the door. And that was one of the ways to do so. And this was, I'm dating myself, but this was back in the dial up age where you had to like fight for phone line to get onto the internet. It's like AOL and, just all the messaging that would kind of go with that. And so I figured the only thing that I could really do with the physical injuries that I had and to maintain that connection was to start this organization to be able to connect with other critically injured firefighters that didn't have the resources. Because I was one of very few people that had survived the type of injuries that I had to my lungs. And so I was actually a test subject for some NASA physicians that came over to the hospital to study me. And so it was very isolating all the way around, socially, medically, from the fire department, and not having those resources. And so I started this organization to try to connect other injured firefighters with potential resources, not even knowing what I was doing, to be quite honest with you. And so I chose the name Firefighter Ministries because ministries means to serve. And I wanted to serve firefighters. And coming from a person of faith, it was very important to me to be able to kind of bring that element of faith into that work that I was doing. It gave me meaning and it gave me purpose. And so it started that way initially as assisting with injured firefighters.
Very cool. And at some point, there was a name change in there, right?
Yes, correct. So we ended up changing our name to the Texas Line of Duty Death Task Force. And the purpose was that for that was a fire chief from the east part of Texas called me up one day and he stated, "Hey, we've had a fatality happen at this fire department. It's their second one in less than 5 years, and they don't know what they're doing and they need help. Can you come and help?" Now, mind you, I have not worked on any other fatality before. It was only injuries. And so I kind of went kicking and screaming into that because number one, I felt like I should have died and I don't want to have to go subject myself to all the things that that firefighter was going to be honored for and me not having that or my husband not having that. And so there was still a bitterness in a way, to be quite honest. And then the other aspect was I didn't know what the heck I would do once I was there. I'd never done that before. But he managed to convince me to come out there and I did. And that was a real wake-up call where I was checked. My attitude was checked and I realized then just how devastating it was for everybody involved. There was an injured firefighter in that particular incident, and it was devastating for him. Of course, the fatality itself. And so for me, that was kind of looking in the mirror and saying to myself, this is not what I was imagining it to be. It's just as devastating for these families, and my husband would have had to experience that if I were to die. And so at that moment, I felt blessed that I was given this opportunity, and that my husband was given an opportunity for us to continue living as a family together, and he didn't have to go through that. And what's kind of ironic out of that story was that's what really catapulted us into primarily taking care of families of the fallen and agencies of the fallen. I have not really been able to go back and do specific work for the injured as much as I would have liked to, but I realized that that was not my purpose. And that's kind of, that next aspect of my story.
Yes. And having been involved now in, I don't know, a handful of firefighter funerals, like the heaviness,
Yeah,
I mean, it's a lot
it is a lot.
to make sure the family is taken care of and not forgotten, and make sure that you honor that firefighter the best they can. I mean, yeah, I've done a lot of that, and so kudos to you, because I think I remember hearing in the episode you did with Dan and Chris, like there was 20 something line of duty deaths in Texas. What, in 2023?
In 2013, yeah, it was
2013, sorry.
yeah, the unlucky number 13. Yeah, it truly was for us that year.
Yeah. So, I mean, and you're assisting all those, and you know, you could be doing whatever. You could be on vacation. You could be, you know, next week you'll be driving to Nashville,
Nashville, yeah.
and and something could happen, and it's like whatever you're doing gets put on pause, right?
Yeah, for
I mean,
sure.
I deal with that in the peer support world.
Mhm.
And boundaries are good, but like when it comes down to it, like this is what we do now. Like
Right.
I like to think that both of us, both our careers ended prematurely, and we've just
Mhm.
both been repurposed.
Absolutely. Because only you can tell that story, and only you can bring a perspective that nobody else really has. There may be some similarities, but there's not that individual perspective and journey that either you or I have been on, that we can't utilize that for good. And that's a big piece of what I do within the organization. I I absolutely love this work that I've been blessed with, to be quite honest with you. I feel like God has a sense of humor because when I was a little kid, I was really afraid of dead people, like funeral home dead people, not trauma on the street dead people. And so the fact now that that is primarily where I find myself is in funeral homes is a little bit humorous. But what I have found over the years is that I absolutely am honored and absolutely love to be with those families. Whether or not I'm still with a volunteer fire department and get to do a lot of things with that department, including the chaplaincy piece. So whether or not I am working with somebody in the community member that's experiencing a death, or I'm working with a family of a fallen first responder, I get to have what I say kind of to occupy what's called a thin space in the Celtic world, where it's like the space between life and death. And the fact that there's many times that I've been put in that place where I've got like one foot on this side and one foot on that side, and I get to help that family make that transition into their grief journey. I love it. An incredible blessing to be a part of that. A lot of people talk about how neat it is to be a part of a birth when you witness a child coming into this world, and it's truly a miracle. But it is also just as much of a miracle um, to be with a family and help transition into this long journey of grief. And if I am there when that is taking place, or when there's been many times where I've been brought into a hospital where they've just pronounced a first responder, and I've been a part of that, where I'm at the bedside. It's like, again, one foot on earth and one foot in heaven, and being able to make that transition and help prepare remains for the family to see, or be there with the family when that happens. It's a gift. It is such a gift. And so if I can be the first step for that person and make it something that is memorable for them and can be a sense of comfort and compassion, and start that grief journey on the right foot, per se, then I've done my job. And it's a tremendous honor to be able to do it. And I love it so much.
It is amazing work, amazing work. And I don't know, I don't think there's a good segue to the next part. I don't
Yeah.
even know
No,
how
there's not, is there?
I've been trying to think like, how do I even bring this up? But like,
Yeah.
if fast forward, you've been doing this for years, 2023.
2024. It's our 25th year this year.
Yeah, wow. I mean, that's,
25. Long
you
time.
know, and then, but your husband then actually,
Mhm.
dies in the line of duty.
Yeah. Can't make it up.
Yeah, I mean, it's a crazy story. It is. It's book worthy, absolutely. Um, how being on the other side now, knowing everything you did for all those years, did it make it easier or harder to deal with your own loss?
So that's a great question. It's a great question. I really do think it made my job as now a widow and a mother of a child who no longer has her father actually easier, because I'm a grief educator as well. So I've been certified to provide that education and support to families and whoever I come into contact with that's been through a loss. There's hard parts and there's easier parts. And what I would say, as far as the hard part, is because I've done this work for so very long, and we were one of the national models for the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation's last program. And so our state helped them build that particular program 20 something years ago. 2006 is when they launched that. So, yeah, coming up on 20 years now. Um, there's a boundary for me in working with these families, and then also working at Memorial Weekend, where taking care of the fallen, even though we do this all volunteer, it's still my job. And so there's a delineation for me to maintain this boundary with the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation, and not coming in as a family member, but staying as a volunteer and a representative of the fire service in this capacity. So, in that aspect, it's been a little bit difficult trying to tread those waters. I don't feel like I am one of the survivors, if that makes sense, because I've just built that boundary up. And so for Memorial Weekend, not this year, but the year before, when John was memorialized, I told the foundation, this is what we want to do. We don't want to be a part of the family services. We want to be a part of the volunteer. We want to come in and do our work that we've done for the last couple of Memorial Weekends. And they said, whatever you want, because they had never been through something like this themselves. Like, what do we do with one of our own that has gone through this loss? And so basically I was there first, and they wanted to make sure that I didn't regret anything, or that my daughter didn't regret not participating. But for the both of us, um, we were immersed in this for years. Catherine, my daughter, has grown up with the National Fallen Firefighters for years. And so that, I would say, would be the harder aspect of things. But the easy part wrapped into that is when we did go back and serve the year that John was memorialized, we had our own team of people with the volunteers that we had worked with over the past couple of years. She wanted to be with them, like Peter Matthews with Firehouse, Dennis Rubin, who is the fire chief from DC. They all fell in love with her the first time she worked there before John died. And so for her, those were her support people, were all of those people. Greg Collier, there's just a bunch of incredibly wonderful people that we were able to be surrounded by, that when we went through that. And so we were able to honor John's legacy and still be memorialized and honored ourselves through the service that we provided. And so there's this built-in friendship and this built-in brotherhood per se, even within the foundation itself, that we felt surrounded and supported, I think even more so than what a traditional family would go in, not having that background, if that makes sense. And so my support has really come from the families that I have served. So a lot of the families that I have taken care of have now come beside me, to help kind of navigate through that journey with me. And that's an incredible gift per se. So there's a whole lot more easiness to it because of that experience, but also there's some challenges that I've had to face too and try to figure that out, especially moving forward and continuing to care for people.
Yeah. And, you talked about memorializing John. One
Mhm.
of the things that you're doing, and it's really the reason I talked you into doing this, was
Yeah.
you're putting on an upcoming health and wellness symposium in his
Yeah.
honor.
Yes.
How did that come about?
So the fascinating thing for me in doing this work over the years is that we have to find something good out of something that has been so tragic. People need to find meaning to make meaning. And so people often refer to, the 5 steps of grief. There's really no such thing as the 5 stages or steps of grief. What that was brought up was for people that were facing death, like so people who had a cancer, uh, they were potentially going to die from cancer, they were terminal. Those 5 stages were actually built for them. However, there's been a sixth stage that they really consider for people who have endured that loss, and that's the making meaning. How do we find meaning? And through meaning is when we really start our healing journey and recovering from and rebuilding from that loss per se. And so where I have seen some of our families really get stuck in their grief and really have a hard time moving forward is that they haven't been able to find meaning or make meaning from that loss. And so it's a really big thing for me personally and for our organization when it's the appropriate time to help that family figure out what the legacy is for their loved one that has died. And I think that's where a lot of the meaning making takes a hold of, is when they find that legacy piece. And so what I say is it can be as simple as making a one-time $10 donation, if that's all you can afford, to something in that person's name, or starting a scholarship, or going and volunteering their time. But for me, I really like to do things the hard way and do something that's completely impossible. I like come up with these things in the middle of the night, and I try to suck people into buying into it. And so this is kind of where the symposium took place, because one aspect that has grown quite significantly within the Texas Line of Duty Death Task Force, which is what Firefighter Ministries used to be. So that's our new name, or really our 24th year name, is being able to make those connections, but then also trying to figure out those hard parts. And so I like to be able to do the hard things and then make them a reality, right? And so the organization as a whole came from trying to make meaning from my injury, which was a hard thing to do. And so I managed to suck in some volunteers. And many of them have been with me almost the 25 years. Like going back to what you said earlier, it's hard work to jump into peer support or grief work. It's hard enough being a first responder, much less getting your feet dirty in grief and loss and trauma and supporting people. And because of that particular work and helping families, we actually started moving into the mental health space and providing resources to first responders that were coming to us and saying, we need these resources, which then brought us into the disaster piece, where we've worked quite a few now mass casualty, large scale disasters as an organization, even though that's kind of out of our wheelhouse. But all of that to say is that I look at all of those experiences and say, okay, what is it that I can pull from in order to make meaning for my own loss and my own way of honoring John? And so Chris Muscle and I were talking one day, and he said, "Hey, we need to do like an event of some sort where we talk about, mental health and have a weekend and whatnot." And so funny is I met Dan only maybe I think it was like 6 months before John died. And so I got to know him and Frank Lido from the FDNY. And they checked on me pretty quickly after all of the things that happened. But I ended up calling Dan somehow in this conversation in the summer of last year. I said, "Hey, Chris and I want to potentially look at this." And he's like, "Well, the mental health component of it, there's quite a few conferences that really do focus on mental health specifically." And so he said, "We may want to do something a little bit different." And so that's when I really started thinking, okay, when I look from my injury, moving through the years, still being in the first responder world, and then John's experience as a Houston firefighter, as a volunteer, as a chief, what are some of the things that I can draw from all of those collective experiences into an event? And that's where I thought, oh, the health and wellness, it's not just about the mental health piece. All parts of us have to really be in tune in order to function as a human being, much less a first responder. And so that's where the idea became, okay, what are some of the things that we've been impacted by? Of course, the mental health piece of it, but cardiac, John died from a heart attack. And so, can we potentially have some speakers focus on the cardiac piece, the cancer aspect of things? What's interesting is that when he collapsed, I actually thought he had a head injury and not a cardiac, and my brain just went into tunnel vision. It's fascinating what the brain will do when it's in a trauma, kind of that fight or flight mode, and how it'll react. You really don't have control over it. It's pretty fascinating, from the stepping outside and looking in, the psychological piece of that. And so I ordered an autopsy on him, and that could have really been it could have messed us up later on with benefits if they had found something else, because cardiac is presumptive, right? And so they don't require the autopsy. But I was so tunnel visioned on a head injury. But when that autopsy report came back, not only did it show what research has found, his whole body was systemically inflamed and reacting to that. So from the brain all the way down into the kidneys, it was just inflamed. And so that right there showed, number one, the research that has been done is true. Like, all of the stress that we put on our body, it is being absorbed by our whole system and can produce these outcomes. But the most fascinating piece for me was that there was a pretty substantial carbon buildup in his respiratory tract, and it actually started inflaming it enough where there was some edema happening in the alveoli and pieces of the lung. And so I've asked several people in the research side of things, do you think that was from that night, or do you think it was cumulative? Because we really didn't run a whole lot of fires. And so most of the thought process has been from that evening. And so, because it was an exterior fire that we were on, nobody went inside, but yet we were outside, and here was all this carbon buildup. And I was thinking, well, no wonder we all have cancer, or people are getting cancer, or the cancer risks are going up. So let's include cancer speakers in this. And so it became this whole body, whole wellness symposium. And so I wanted to be able to honor all aspects of what really firefighters and EMS workers are exposed to in our line of work, and try to cover those pieces with relevant speakers on that.
Well, you did really good in
Thank
in
you.
booking your speakers.
Thank you.
I looked at the website and I was like, wow. I mean, for the people that know who these people are,
Yeah,
it's an impressive lineup. Stephanie White, Chief Dave Rhodes, Frank Lido, Dan DeGrice, Sarah Janke, Brittany Hollerback, Chris Muscle, Megan Loutz, and Brandon Dryman. Those were the individuals that I know and love.
I know. And they're all
And
ears.
there,
Like,
there's that's like half of them, maybe a third. There's a whole lot more that I'm not familiar with that I'm looking forward to learning more about and learning more from.
I'm so blessed. I really think that just having, again, the friendships and this brotherhood that we have within the fire service. And really, a lot of times we end up talking about the difficulties that we face with other first responders. Sometimes we focus on the negative aspect of things, but really, when something like this happens, people do rally around you and want to be able to be supportive. And I really think that because of what it is and what I'm trying to do with the legacy piece, and being able to bring John's story forward to be able to say, hey, what is it that we can learn from him? Because John was a huge educator. He wanted to make sure he did not care if you were a career firefighter or if you were a rural volunteer firefighter. He wanted you to be certified and educated. And so sometimes he was a little gruff about it. But he loved his people and he wanted them all to be at the top of their game. And so for me, in doing this, having people that are at the top of their game in the research and in what they know and the experiences that they've had, to be able to pull them in to honor John is huge. And so I think even their own personal stories, they've been able to feel those through John's story and through my story, and have just come beside me to be able to make this a reality. And so, whether or not it's something that we do every year, I don't know, but at least doing it at least this one time to honor him and to tell his story, from the educator standpoint to everything that we've been exposed to. If we can make a difference in even one person, then that's all that really matters to me.
Yeah. And that truly is amazing. And that's funny. I was chuckling because when you're talking about doing another one, I'm like, yeah, it
A lot
starts
of
with
work.
one and then
Yes.
goes from there. And I would say that each one gets a little bit easier,
Yeah,
but it is, I mean, the way I do it, it is a year-long process.
it really is.
It's like I told you before we started, it's like throwing a wedding every year.
Yes.
That's kind of what it is. But I see I see the benefits it has. I see the change it has. I know, I mean, our conference, which is again the same players are involved.
Yeah.
Um, I know, I mean, we've saved lives, we've
Yeah.
saved marriages, and it's, just like you, I've never got paid monetarily, but
Yes.
the payment has been those type of situations, and you're going to get that as well come
Yeah.
September. Your
I was,
conference is taking place September 26th through 28th, right?
yes,
In
yes,
the Austin, Texas area, right?
yes. Pflugerville, which is right outside of Austin. So it's an easy plane flight in.
Good barbecue all around there. That's that's
Correct.
that's just bonus for us fat guys that are
Yeah,
going.
right. Not
Yeah.
calling you that. I'm just saying barbecue is great for everybody.
Yes, skinny people too. Um, the price to attend, $140.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh,
that is very, very, very reasonable in for this type of conference, and especially this kind of lineup, this caliber.
yeah. And the thing is I always want to make things free. And so I really had to kind of fight with my planning committee, because, we do have to cover expenses and whatnot, but I don't want anybody to have to miss out on attending. And so it is hard to be able to put a price tag. And so I said, what is the lowest amount that we can charge, to get away with it? But also for that too, we do have Texas A&M, their TEACS program coming in, and so they're able to offer the CEs, and they're good, nationally. So we're blessed on that aspect of things. So some of those fees will help cover them as well.
And the hotel is also very reasonable.
Yeah.
What, $143 or something like that?
Yeah, it's anywhere I think from 120 to 140-ish. Yeah, it's not too
Yeah,
bad.
much much better than our Nashville hotel, right?
I know. I know, right?
I love
It's a great
Nashville,
spot
but it's
though.
expensive.
I
Yes,
know. And
yes.
we're aiming for anybody to be able to attend. And so it doesn't matter if you are a rural volunteer firefighter. We want those people to be able to have this information, but all the way up to career and industrial. wildland. And I think what we're going to end up doing, we did have a wildland track or a wildfire track, but just because of all of the devastation that has really occurred across this country over the last year, I think we're probably going to switch that over to kind of a disaster piece of it because of Hawaii and the Palisades, and then now what happened in Kerrville, and then North Carolina. There's been such an impact on our fire service, where we don't even really think about all of the responders that come from all over the country into one particular disaster. So, all the USAR teams that come in and whatnot, is that there's a lot of people that are coming away from these things physically, mentally, spiritually tired. And so how do we continue to provide them support as they recover themselves from what they've been exposed to? So at first, our that second track, we were really focused on the wildfire aspect, because again, that was part of my husband's legacy. Was he had a midlife crisis and decided to go into wildfire when he was like 54, and I was like, you do that when you're 20, what is wrong with you? But he loved it, and so I'm like, well, I'm going to have that track. But I think that's going to be too specific. And with all of the things that we have faced nationally over this last year, I think we'll just kind of streamline it more to the disaster scope of things.
Those wildland guys are crazy.
They are crazy. Yeah,
Yeah.
they are.
And it's if you've ever had a discussion with somebody that California, Texas, I mean,
Yeah,
but then you compare it to like Ohio or Wisconsin,
yeah.
and you have the conversation, and you're like, would you rather do your wildfire stuff or fight a fire in the snow and ice? They all instantly are like, wildfire all the way. Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
want to
for
deal with
sure.
that. And we're
No,
like,
nope.
I'll deal with the cold,
I don't want to dig a trench.
I'll deal with the snotty mustache.
Yeah,
I'm out on the wildfire stuff.
yeah.
It's just
It's a
funny. It's
different
funny how
breed.
that works.
They also have really cool beards too. So I feel like if you ever wanted to switch over, you have the beard going.
I'm good. I'm good. No thanks. I like doing what I'm doing now in
Yes,
comparison.
yes. Right.
Let's see. So where can everybody find out more information and actually register for the symposium?
So they just need to go to the website, firstrespondersymposium.com, and you can see the tracks on there. You can pull down information on the different tracks, as far as the instructors that will be there. I'll be posting the ones that'll be doing the disaster track within the next couple of days as well. But the registration is right there on the front page, but it's also in the different sections as far as the different tracks that we'll have. The National Fallen Firefighters Foundation is going to come in and do a pre-conference, because I think a lot of times we don't think about our leadership and what they're going through as well. And so that Friday night, a pre-conference, they'll be doing something on leadership quotient. So there's a registration for that. And then the other track, so we'll do a general health and wellness, a disaster track, and then the third track is going to be taking care of our own. So for agencies that are interested in putting together a pre-plan or trying to figure out what it would look like for their department to suffer a loss, really of any kind, not even just a line of duty, that's one of the tracks that they can choose from too. But it's all there on the website, firstrespondersymposium.com.
And you know what I love too is all the topics. I mean, these are heavy topics,
Yes. Yeah.
but you are kind of fighting that heaviness by bringing in a comedian.
Right. Right.
So
Absolutely.
you're kind of we're having a little bit of balance, which is I think great when it comes to this stuff. In the past I've made the mistake of having too heavy of things one after another, and
Yeah. It's
it'll
hard.
it'll suck out the energy of that room, and leave people reeling. So
Yes.
it's always finding that balance and to kind of avoid that feeling. And that's kind of why we do all the silliness we do, is to combat that.
Yeah, you have such an amazing idea. And, I really do, now that I know you and have learned a little bit over the last, I think I learned about you. I think yours is in October, correct?
Correct.
I
Yes.
think I remember learning about it sometime in the October timeframe. I look at that as a mentor to me, even though we haven't really known each other for very long. But in understanding what you've done and kind of the issues that you're talking about, how to avoid that this year, and making sure that they have a good experience just based off of what you've been through, and putting your event together as well. So thank you for that. In our short time of really knowing each other, I learned a
And
lot.
Nick and I are both going to be in attendance, and we'll be happy to give you constructive criticism if you want for it.
Perfect.
You know,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
um, because we done this now a lot, and we've gone to a lot of places and seen it, and I have, I think, a pretty good grasp of it.
Yes, for
Yeah.
sure. Always need somebody who's a little bit farther down the road than we are, just to be able to
Yeah, we just had a little bit of a head start, but I mean, look, for your comparing what you've already are doing for your first one to our first one, it's so you're so far ahead of where we were when we started.
I'm blessed, that's for sure. I'm blessed.
So it's clearly you have a great team surrounding you, and
Yeah.
really helping guide you, and putting this whole thing together, and it's going to be very impactful, and all I ask for you is take a moment when you're there and
Yeah.
just take it all in, smell the roses for once. It's not
Yes.
something that you and I do naturally. Like, we have to
Right.
force ourselves to do that, but all that hard work, like, you should just be able to take a moment and just enjoy that moment. And
Yeah.
because the other thing I would always do, and I hope you don't do this too, but I would always be like, all right, we got through this one. Like, the conference would end on Friday, and I would take the weekend off and relax. And then Monday, I'm sitting there going, how do I top that?
Yes. Yes. Yep.
And instead of just kind of living in that afterglow and just knowing you did good, you deserve a little bit of break, and then you can kind of ease yourself back into figuring out if you want to do it again or not.
Right. Sounds like you're an overachiever as well.
My wife would say the other thing, but sure.
Oh yeah. No, spouses have a
Underachieve.
completely different perspective. The for work front, yes.
Yes. No, but I'm excited to be there.
Thank
It's
you.
right around the corner. It's going to be great. So with that, I'll get you out of here, and I guess I'll go back to doing some yard work.
Yeah, good luck.
So, real quick, Wendy, where can everybody, if they wanted to reach out to you and find out some more, where can they reach out?
Sure. So you can find me on our Texas LODD Task Force website as well. So Texas LODD Task Force.com, for just our general work that we do. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram, all the socials. And then for the symposium, again, that's firstrespondersymposium.com. We do have a Facebook page for that, not an Instagram as of yet. But either way, they can get a hold of me that way. So.
Nice. You mentioned the AOL back then, years
Yes. Oh my
ago.
gosh.
The the hoping nobody else needs to use the phone, and
Right? Don't have to do
oh
that anymore. It's now
gosh.
bandwidth.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Crap, I was going to ask you one other thing. Oh,
Sure.
I was just going to say, you created this line of duty task force, and you created it in the largest state that we have. Like, why didn't you just do
See,
like Rhode Island or something?
that's what I was telling you earlier is like I come up with these ideas. I'm like, this sounds great. Let me just make it bigger and better. And so, yes, of all the places, it would have to be Texas. And I will tell you that we have got quite a few stories that have come from Texas in this line of work that's like in Texas of all places. But I don't know. Again, I feel like God has a sense of humor. It's like, let's just throw her into the biggest mix and see what she can do with it. So I will say though, I could not do it without my team. I again am so greatly blessed to have a team of people that are willing to volunteer their time and efforts and are just amazing. And I say we've grown up in the fire service together. We were 20 something years old when we started this, and we went into these meetings with fire chiefs and whatnot, and they were probably looking at us going, they are idiots. And now, looking back as, later on in our career, like we were able to accomplish so much and we didn't get kicked out of rooms.
Just being, and it's crazy for being as naive and just
I know. I
like,
know.
and but it You know what? I'm sure no matter what, even if the experience wasn't there,
Yeah.
what was there was that heart that entire
Yes.
time. And I'm
Yeah.
sure they saw right through that and was like, they're in this for the right reasons. And
Yeah,
yeah,
for
we're gonna support them any way we can.
Yeah. And I would say, I guess kind of to help in this too, is that I I would not change this for the world. I would go back and do it all over again because I've just been able to be a part of so many incredible experiences and do incredible work, and support some of the best people that I know that have been through tremendous loss and hardship. And so, as much as I still grieve the fact that I can't go into an IDLH environment, I still get to be an active participant in a fire department and keep my kind of toe in the door. But I wouldn't change a thing because I've been able to be a
Right?
part of
Like I
all
said
three.
earlier, you've just been repurposed.
Absolutely.
And everything you do is still a huge contribution.
Yeah,
And
it's legacy.
it helps the fire service, the families. It's
Yes,
God's work that you're doing.
absolutely. Yep.
So it's tremendous. And I'm so blessed that God put us together in Nashville.
I agree. I agree.
And
Friends now. I get to stalk you
yes,
at
and
your conference.
I am very stalkable, and I'm just using your conference as an excuse to go get barbecue. Really,
That's right. Chris
not
will
really.
hook you
Yeah.
up.
Well, okay, a little bit, but anyway, let's get you out of here.
Thank you.
She's Wendy, and I am Jim, and we'll see you next month. Take care.
Thank you, Jim. Bye.